Kirk, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Good to have you here with us at the Spokane Convention Center for our event this year in REV UP 2022.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So we were just chatting a little bit about the Roe v. Wade decision and the timing of LifeMark and how it was delayed for a year. Can you just tell people a little bit about how that transpired and the initial release date being pushed back due to COVID and then Roe v. Wade, and just tell people a little bit about that?
Well, it's unbelievable. And essentially you just told them. I mean, that's exactly it. The movie that we just came out in the theaters with, LifeMark, is a movie that is all about the value of life and the beauty of adoption. And that started out as a crazy idea back in 2019 when someone sent me a documentary called I Lived on Parker Avenue. And it was the true story of a girl who chose adoption over abortion and made the toughest decision of her life. And this boy was raised by a loving family, and 19 years later, he had a chance to meet his biological mother, and she thought that he hated her for what she did, and he actually goes to her because he wants to thank her for the choice that she made and tells her what a great life he has. So when I decided I wanted to turn this into a movie, I asked my friends, the Kendrick brothers, who made Fireproof with me years ago and a movie called Courageous and War Room and some of these others, if they thought it was a good idea. And they said, not only do we think it's a good idea, we think we're supposed to make it with you. So we made it in 2019. And so it's been 3 years. And we were supposed to release this a long time ago, but because of the COVID shutdowns, it was delayed. And then who would have thought in our lifetime, Roe versus Wade gets overturned? And then just weeks after that decision by the Supreme Court, here's a movie in the movie theaters for the entire nation to see on the value of life and the beauty of adoption. So I think the timing was clearly providential, and we're thrilled at the way that people are reacting to it. It's got a 97% Rotten Tomatoes rating, which is it's hard to get a 90%. Yeah. So 97% is great. And
is the critics rating like 3, and then everyone else is like 100? Because that's always how it goes with good movies.
There's always got to be a balance, but we're still waiting for the negative balance. It's almost universally positive, even from the critics.
Wow.
And those who are not even of a Christian faith persuasion. So it's really incredible to see how it's turning out.
Yeah, and it's just a movie about love, really. It really is. My wife and I went to see it, and
okay, be honest, did you cry at all?
I did. I do.
Okay,
all
right.
She's a rock. She's solid as a rock. She never does. And I, when you guys brought that, when the nurse brings out the baby during the adoption process, spoiler alert, I was a ball of tears and trying to not be, but I look over and she was crying. And she never cries. So she goes, well, it wasn't that, it was the baby. I'm like, I know, but you never cry. You know, we've watched I Can Only Imagine, we've watched War Room, we've watched all these movies. I'm always a bundle of tears. She's always just solid as a rock.
She's stoic. Yeah. So, all right, guys, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you're going to see LifeMark, score some husband points and just magically have the tissues ready. Right there in your jacket pocket. You'll score big husband points because she will cry, and you probably will too. Yeah. But it's full of laughter and funny moments to break up all of the tear-jerking emotion. Plus, I love that it's got action. It's got skydiving, cliff jumping, ATV racing, knife throwing, wrestling, and all those things make for a good movie. You don't want to sit there and cry for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see how it's influencing a nation and giving a new perspective on the loving option of adoption.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a no-brainer option, really. I think that we do a disservice in the Christian community by not coming alongside those people who are considering abortion and saying, hey, this isn't your only option. You can adopt. You can give this child up for adoption, and it will go to a loving family. Yeah. And I think we just don't do that enough as a whole, as a community as a whole. And at the end of the movie, you guys go into that segment that's about, I think it was about 10 minutes long, and you talk about those options. Like, hey, abortion
after the movie's over.
Yeah, the abortion isn't your only option. So talk a little bit about, it's very unorthodox from a movie perspective. So what kind of led you guys into that direction? Say, hey, let's not just be done with the movie. Let's move in and let's educate people on how do you go about not getting an abortion, but giving your child up for adoption.
Well, Dale, I think this was providential also, because when we started to shop this movie around to the distribution companies, the studios, they universally declined. Even the studios that have made tens of millions of dollars off of previous movies made by my partners, the Kendrick brothers. Why? Because of the issue. No one wants to even hint that they might be in support of something that is not woke and leftist, and they may get some backlash from connecting with a movie like this. And so we weren't sure if it was even going to be released, but the company that stepped up to the plate with open arms was the Fathom Events movie distribution company. So they put events like the Metropolitan Opera and heavyweight boxing championship fights and niche material content for certain communities, and they put them in the movie theaters on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights for a limited run. And often there's a live component to it. So this was perfect for us because this allowed us to be in the theaters and be in the theaters over 3 weeks, including weekends. It also allows a component for us to come on screen after the film is over and have a conversation with the audience in the theater. And that's what you're talking about, where we were able to come out and talk about the fact that I am an adoptive father myself. My wife is an adopted child. My first 4 kids were one doctor appointment away from not existing. So was my wife. And if she hadn't been born, either would our 2 natural-born children exist in the world. And then
you wouldn't have given the life to your adoptive kids that you guys have been able to provide as well.
That's right. And we even had a woman there who talked about her experience being post-abortive herself and all that she's gone through and how there is hope and how there is healing. And there are so many options with so many different pregnancy resource centers and faith communities and so many others to help you think through these difficult personal choices, and knowing that abortion is not your only option. In fact, there are options that are life-giving and that are generationally transforming. And we think that adoption is a loving choice that everyone should make if they're in that kind of a situation where they're facing an unplanned pregnancy. Think of the ultimate gratitude that we have for the young woman who was pregnant with Jesus Christ himself in the form of an unplanned pregnancy from her human perspective.
Yeah.
And the dad that stepped up to the plate and said, I'm with you. I'm not going to leave you.
In a time where
and we're going to adopt him.
And this is in a time also where culture, there's no coming back from that. You're kicked to the curb, and no one interacts with you if they feel that you have had a pregnancy out of wedlock.
Right.
And so for the faith in Mary and Joseph both to say, no, we're going to explain this to the culture. We're going to tell them this was a miracle.
And it wouldn't make sense to anybody. Nice story, Mary. You probably could have come up with something a little more believable. Yeah. But they were all in. How selfless was that? And how grateful are we? And I think what I love about LifeMark, Dale, is that it is not an anti-abortion movie per se. In fact, abortion is talked about very little. It's a pro-love, as you said, pro-family, pro-forgiveness, pro-reconciliation, pro-new beginnings. And it shows the beautiful side of what happens when someone values life and chooses the adoption option. It can be a beautiful ending.
It's funny because one of the things that's touched on in the movie in general is how will that child think of me if I give them up for adoption in the future? Yeah. So when they come of age and I can contact them, what will they think of me? I think they'll hate me. Will they hate me? Well, if you have an abortion, the child doesn't even have the opportunity to hate. So I think in a way it's more inspiring that to at least give them that opportunity to make that choice. And miracles can happen. That child can choose love. Yes, some may have resentment. There may be questions. There may be tears. But that child can also choose love. And that's the big thing. It's give them the opportunity to choose. Let them choose. And if there are some bumps along the way and there's some hurt and some heartbreak, then at least they have life.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm thrilled that we had a chance to do this. But I'm speaking of just tonight, and what we have a chance to do tonight is to maybe change some hearts and some minds, and to inspire people to get behind We Believe We Vote, and to get behind you revving people up for 2022 and the midterm elections and beyond, to make sure that their votes are aligning with representatives who value the same things that they value, that their families value, that God values, because those are the things that lead to human flourishing.
Amen. Yeah, God is the center of our organization. So we believe that we do things through Christ, and that he uses us for his purpose, and that we are just willing to step out in faith, and that he will guide us and he will make things happen. And so I think it's important that people realize as well that that's all we want. We just want God's representatives, not man's representatives. We want God's representatives, and by being a Christian, they will by default represent us. And that's truly what we want. We're raising up these candidates, and we're saying, hey, politics isn't dirty. We are an organization that values this, and we are going to send you a survey. We're going to let you tell people what you believe, and let them make the decision with their vote.
Yeah. I love it. And, some people they freak out over an organization like yours because they think you're promoting some sort of weird theocracy where you're saying, like, Christians are representatives of God and they're going to be representatives of us. So that means sort of we've got all of these priests and priestesses up there who are going to be controlling Washington. Well, you'd think we kind of have priests and priestesses of the Church of Satan in Washington, D.C. that's sort of like governing Washington, D.C. and the nation, when you see the godlessness and evil that is rolled out and rolled down that hill. Instead, I think tonight is going to be an eye-opener, and it's just going to show people that every form of law, every state's law, every country's law is really the reflection of the internal moral values of the people. If you have a representative republic like ours, or the values of the dictator if you don't.
Correct.
And so it's not an area that can be abandoned by people of faith, because if you do, people with lesser values and evil convictions will get into the positions of power. They're the gatekeepers for your church, and they can shut it down by law. They can close your schools by law and refuse to allow you to be involved in the sacred decisions of your children's education, of their identity, crazy things.
Yeah.
And we're actually realizing that now, and that's why I think people are waking up, and they're standing up, and we're seeing moms at school boards, and we're seeing people from other countries now coming back to us in America going, wake up. I'm going to have Cuban neighbors down the street. I have Vietnamese neighbors. I have Russian neighbors, Taiwanese neighbors who are saying, Americans, like, you don't get it because you don't understand what this is like. You grew up here in the land of freedom with such a rich heritage. We came here to escape from the stuff that you're voting for now.
Yeah. Amen. I've heard that too. So that was just great points overall. I mean, there's so much to unpack, but we only have a couple more minutes. So why don't you let people know what you did with your first 100 days or the first 100 days of lockdown with your 100-day campfire revival? Because I think this is something that people overlook that you did that was so monumental, I guess, that it was so inspiring. And I think that we know you from Left Behind, we know you from LifeMark now, and we know you from the series. I know you from the series that you did with Ray Comfort. Ray Comfort. Right. That was one of my favorites, actually. And so we know that you did these things, but I don't think a lot of people really know what the 100-day campfire revival was about.
The grandmas know, because they're the ones on Facebook, right? That's the platform for grandmas. I just don't know how to use a TikTok account, or I'm iffy on Instagram, so Facebook. Anyway, so I was under house arrest under our governor in the communist state of California, and when Joe Biden was sworn into office, there's the tradition of the first 100 days of every new president, and I remember just seeing the look on everyone's faces going, oh no, what's going to happen over these? And it's like everyone's sitting on the couch watching CNN or Fox News to hear everyone complain about all of the awful things happening. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, let's get off the defense, get on the offense. Let's roll out our own 100-day plan as the family of faith. How about that? And I was sort of hearing crickets, like, what's the plan? What's the plan? At least in my circles. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to be stuck in my backyard, I'm going to execute on some mandates that have come down from the King of Kings, not from the White House, but from heaven. Like, if my people will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways and seek my face, I will hear their prayers, forgive their sins, and heal their land. And I'm thinking, that's what we need. So let's do that. And so I went on Facebook. I lit 100 consecutive campfires every single night of Biden's 100 first days in office. And I just went through a book written by a Christian historian friend of mine. The book's called The American Covenant, The Untold Story. And it just walks through everything that our founding fathers and mothers understood that we have forgotten with regard to being in covenant with God. Mm-hmm. And how that is rooted in the ancient Hebrew Republic under the leadership of Moses and the great covenants that the people of God made with the Lord back then. And obviously there's differences between Israel and America, but the character of God hasn't changed, and the moral foundation of a good nation has not changed. And we understand that every successful marriage must be based on a sacred promise and covenant relationship with one another and with God. And I think the same is with a nation. And so we did that for 100 days in a row. And I know that it sure gave me a lot of hope and a lot of confidence that all is not lost, because history and the Bible teach us that covenant keepers win and covenant breakers lose every time. You just have to stay around long enough to see the end of the story.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes from Frank Turek is, the first line of the Bible is, "In the beginning." And if that's true, anything else is possible.
Yeah.
And it's just so fitting for what you're doing. Kirk, thank you so much.
Thank Great to talk with you.
We look forward to tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.